How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Yeah,
Sorry,
good, thank you.
I thought it was in like 40 minutes, but I must have got the time wrong. But anyway, that's all right. Is it now?
Oh, okay.
Looks
Sorry,
like we're on,
sorry.
so that's all right.
Was it eight o'clock there or 7 o'clock?
It's 8, but I looked at 11 GMT and converted that back to hours, and I thought it said 9 p.m. here, but it's 8. Yeah,
Oh,
anyway, all good.
either way, we got it. We got there.
Sorry about that.
That's all
I'm
right.
gonna
20
go get
minutes of me
more.
just talking to people and then thinking, I don't want to speak to this guy. I don't care about this guy. Brilliant.
Look, he was
Sorry about
smashing
that.
me in like
We were
20
just
minutes.
rolling, so
Oh,
yeah,
you're
that's why I
rolling.
got my gear on. Yeah.
So I've interrupted you at the pinnacle
No,
time
no.
then.
No, no,
Brilliant.
we were just finishing. Yeah, yeah, all good.
Okay. How's things been? Obviously, how's it affecting you guys over your way?
Yeah, it's actually very mild in Australia, but it's still got the gyms out of action. So it's kind of it's this weird. We're in this weird kind of point where it's almost like we're pretty close to actually getting rid of it in Australia. So
Oh wow.
um, like I think there was 9 cases in the whole country today or something that like
Bloody hell.
reported. So uh, which
Yeah,
is
so you
really
got it
good.
quite low then. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's almost like. Uh, I don't know, because looking at people in America, everyone's wanting to get back to training and just kind of suffer the consequences of
Yeah,
doing that.
yeah.
Well, I don't know if that's everyone, but they're certainly, my Facebook feed is full of that. Whereas here, I'm kind of like, well, maybe we can actually get rid of it and then do that and not risk. That would be
Yeah.
awesome.
Do you know what? What's really, really difficult about it is like for us over in the UK, the government have said obviously all gyms to close, restaurants close and stuff to stop the spread. And the reason why they've said it isn't necessarily because they're worried about well, it is about people dying, but it's more about the healthcare systems being overloaded by
Yeah,
too many people going to hospital. So so say for instance, if I don't agree with it, it's very difficult for me to be in a position, as you know, when you run a gym, you can't really go against what government guidelines are trying to tell you to do, regardless whether you agree with it or not. So
yeah, yeah.
for us over here in the UK, there's a lot of people that are like, well, can we reopen our gym? But how can they be seen to be telling people to go against government advice? It's a very hard one.
Yeah, it's a hard one. I mean, it's I get, yeah, I suppose like it's you have to weigh up how much you want to risk people dying because of training, which is a very tough question. Like
Yes.
I guess some people it's their livelihood. Yeah, so
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
it's,
It's
like
difficult.
yeah, I think jiu-jitsu is probably going to be hit harder than just about any other
Well, you can't
profession
get
out there.
much more close than us, can you? When it comes to our
Yeah,
sport, with
yeah.
contact, yeah, it's a difficult one.
I don't.
Um,
I don't, yeah. I have no idea. Anyway, well,
but you're still managing to train. So you're training with you and your wife training together still.
yeah, we've got mats at home, so that works.
Yeah, yeah, that's a bonus. Then it's the same. It's the same for me actually. Me and my girlfriend are still training at home because we got mats. So yeah,
Nice.
it's a bonus. But so basically, what I'm going to quickly do is just go through sort of like your history of in martial arts and stuff, and
Yeah.
then kind of talk about mental processes and a few other things and your training and stuff, and just kind of go from there. So my first question for you, Lockie, is what got you into martial arts?
Yeah, watching kung fu movies, I think, got me. I kind of saw Jet Li, beating up 50 people by himself. I was like, oh yeah, that would be cool to learn. I'd like to learn some kung fu and and have those skills because I had no idea it was any different to that at that time. So that's what got me into it, and then I kind of stuck at it, and eventually came across UFC, UFC 1 and 2, and saw Hoist Gracie, and that got me into jiu-jitsu itself. So,
Yeah.
and the
And
rest was history. Once
what
I started it.
how old were you when you first started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
Jiu-jitsu, I think like 15, yeah.
Yeah.
I might have been 15 or 16 when I did my first competition. So, like I started
Oh
competing
wow.
pretty early. Yeah,
And
it was a pretty rare thing to have competitions back in those days.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, I mean, for me, when I first started, I was being taught by a blue belt because Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu just wasn't big here in the UK at all.
Yeah, I think my coach was a purple when I started, or maybe a brown.
Yeah.
But we had John Will, who was his coach, who was a black belt, kind of overseeing the So yeah, it was. I mean, it was back then. If you met a black belt, it was like, whoa. Like,
yeah. He was like a walking god.
yeah, pretty much. Even a purple belt, you know, back then you met a purple belt, it was like, you know, that was like, yeah.
So, so Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu actually wasn't your first martial art then, or was it?
No, I did like I went to like it was a kung fu school. The guy who was running it had done a little bit of grappling, so he kind of included a bit of that in it, and he'd done a little bit of kickboxing as well, so he kind of added a little bit of that, but it was mostly striking.
Yeah. It's funny because actually my route was exactly the same as yours, funny enough. Exactly the same. Yes, and I was talking about it yesterday, funny enough, but it was because I was a massive Jackie Chan fan.
Oh, nice. So yeah.
The exact same route of and you're not delusional is probably not the right word, but when you see like him beating up 10 people, you think, oh man, I want to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I want that power. So yeah.
I was in high school. I wasn't really someone. I never really got in a fight at high school, but like you would see kids getting in fights all the time. So I was like, I need to be prepared in case something like that happens. But thankfully, I never had to.
So what
through and who knows what would happen.
So what kept you keep going to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? What was it that kept you in the sport?
I think I just enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed it, and I think it was probably just because I enjoyed it. Like I've got one of those personalities that I tend to stick with, you know, whatever I kind of become obsessed about, I'll tend to stick with that for a while, whether it's like, whether it was like VCE, like the high school studies and, certain topics in that, or university physiotherapy. I tend to get pretty deeply involved. I'm one of those people that kind of will end up knowing a lot about a very small amount of, a very small field. I'll know a lot, but know nothing. You put me in a general trivia class or something.
So we'll be a specialist at one thing.
Yeah.
Everything on that.
Yeah.
So how did you, so you were 15, 16 when you had your first competition. Can you recollect or remember how you felt when it came to competing for the first time?
You know what? I'm pretty sure my first ever match was against a girl. I was the only one at like 15. I was pretty small, so I was like, it would have been, 50 kilograms maybe then. Because I was pretty short for like I'm short now, but I was actually small for my size as a kid as well. Like more than I am now, if that makes sense, like compared to average. And there was a girl who was visiting from California or something. I wonder if it's someone who still trains. She would have been like 20 something, but and I was like the only one near her weight division that wanted to jump in this competition. So I went against her first, but I won by armbar. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So what was your first major tournament that you went to then?
Major, as in like international.
Yeah. But the biggest one that you can that comes to mind first. And what belt?
I probably did well. I did well at Worlds at brown belt. That was the first. I think I did 2 or 3 Worlds at brown belt. So I think brown belt was when I really started to take jiu-jitsu quite seriously. Like trying to. I think I had in Australia. I had some good competition results at brown belt, and I thought, okay, like. I'll see how far I can get there, and then I thought, well, I might as well, see how I go on the world level as well. Which,
and what was that like? Traveling, because obviously you're traveling to America for that, right? So, I mean, what was that like for the first time?
It was the first time I think I made a post about this recently, but like my first international training trip was to Cabrinhas. And I was just amazed at how good the brown belt, but like the blue belts and the purple belts were giving me a really hard time. And, you know, like I was there with a friend with another brown belt, Dave, and we'd show up to the midday class. I think it was about 12 o'clock, and there's already people there like on the mat drilling. And I'm like, oh, like, has the class started already? What's this? Why is everyone here practicing? So, you know, the next day we came a bit earlier and people were there again. And then like we realized that people were showing up like an hour early just to drill before training. You know, and the training was pretty hard as well. I was like, oh, these guys are taking it like very seriously. And I hadn't ever really seen like a professional approach to jiu-jitsu training. Like, you know, everyone in Australia had been training, but no one was really like, no one there was going like, oh, we want to be, you know, we want to try and work towards a world championship. You know, which I think obviously people like Cabrinha had that, been through that process and kind of were taking students through that. So it was that's pretty good.
How was how did you feel when it came to being called up to compete when you were actually there in the venue? How was that experience for you, first time? Yeah,
it's obviously pretty nerve-wracking, but sometimes I feel more nerves when I actually when I compete, when I'm expected to win. You know, like sometimes when you're over, especially first, you know, you're overseas, barely anyone you know is even watching. Like you kind of just, obviously, you know, you're nervous, that never goes away, but sometimes the pressure's almost off you a little bit. I suppose that the hard thing is like you think about how much work you've sacrificed to go. You know, like you've spent all this money. You know, you've been working for like the last 6 months to save up for this trip to go overseas and compete, and now, you know, your performance is going to depend on that. So that's tough.
What somebody's just asked a question, actually I was going to go on to next, was how have you ever found the nerves when it comes to competing throughout all your belts, and how have you ever strategized a way to deal with them? How do you deal with the nerves?
Oh, it feels good to roll. Like, you know, if you can get there and, you know, maybe a couple of hours before and just roll and move around, like you just feel, I usually get the most nervous that if I've spent like a couple of days not training before the comp to kind of feel good, which I don't do as much now. I tend to try to keep some level of training up right into it. Cause I think like, I always say like in the match, you're really nervous. And then usually as soon as you have your first grip, that goes, you know, you're no longer nervous. You might be like tense and you got the adrenaline and all that, but you don't feel nervous. You're now just like trying to fight. And I always think if you can try to do that earlier by grabbing someone and moving around and kind of light rolling without getting too puffed, that takes some of it away, but it never fully goes away. So
no.
Yeah.
I mean, how did you just keeping on the mental side of things and the nerves and stuff? Obviously, with the ADCCs, you went into the open weight division, and how was that? Knowing that you obviously when you were fighting such larger opponents, how did you find that?
Yeah, I mean that's
lost you for a second.
I was again in terms of nerves, I was less nervous. Sorry, right? Oh, sorry. I was less nervous than I was in my own division, I think, just because I probably had more expectations in my division. Really, for the open weight, I didn't expect to win any of those matches, so I kind of just went in there and just said, I'm going to just, I know a way to win, which is like go for the legs and try and get a leg lock. So even though I didn't think that was the most likely outcome, I just knew that was what I had to try to do. So,
and if you can, it's going to be hard to do. Can you explain the emotions and the feelings as they went on, match by match, after each submission? Can you explain the emotions and feelings you had?
I mean, I think it was kind of I mean, it was, the first one was huge, obviously like the biggest in terms of a shock. Just one, it was Kanan, who had just won the heavyweight division. So, you know, potentially the toughest guy in the whole division. And he's, so I kind of my first thought was, oh, cool, I'm going to next ADCC, because I was part of the reason I went to open weight was to avoid having to do the trials again. Mo said that if you go in the open weight, you might get to skip the trials. I was like, all right, I hope I don't get injured, so don't give me Buchecha, but I'll give it a go. He gave me the next worst thing. So yeah, so I was very happy. I mean, I couldn't really believe it. So I kind of knew that was going to be a huge thing for me and my, like I'd beaten 2 ADCC champions before that in competitions, but they were both kind of people who were no longer really actively competing. To beat someone who, like that was Hani Yahya was in ABI, but he was doing MMA, not focusing on jiu-jitsu then, so he was kind of out of that field as much as he used to be. And the other one was Rico Rodriguez, who again was kind of that was some time ago when he had won. So to get a win like that against someone who was currently active was pretty big for me.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I couldn't really ask for more. And then so as the matches went on, after I think it was a weird feeling after beating Gaudio, just because I realized I had I have to lose twice in a row to not get a medal at ADCC. That was what I went through. I was like, I'm now in a semi-final, and if I could lose once and I still have another chance at a medal. So, I mean, obviously the odds were still, out of the 4 people left, me, Gordon, Ali, and Buchecha, that the odds were that it wasn't going to be me getting a medal, but I still,
but you did.
It was a weird feeling. And then to obviously to come through in that bronze medal match was unreal. It was a surreal feeling. Having the whole crowd there and everyone cheering was something else.
Mate, I think I commented on it was on one of your posts on Facebook at the time, and yeah, I mean, I can imagine the atmosphere was crazy, but for us back home, so we were watching it back home as a group of lads, and we were screaming at the telly, mate. Like I was going mental at the telly, obviously because even though we don't know each other very personally well, but where you come over, did the seminar and trained with you a bit and through Saxon and stuff like that. Obviously we wanted you to win, so we were just going crazy at the telly.
I think everyone likes when the smaller guy beats the bigger opponent as well. I think so.
People go mental about that anyway, regardless, don't they? Even when they don't know the guy,
Yeah.
So it's pretty special even for us.
I wish I saved them. A lot of people afterwards were sending me videos of their reactions, from home. They kind of, I don't know who was filming it, but yeah, I wish I saved them.
This whole interview and the podcast, I just want to talk about you. I don't really want to talk about necessarily Craig Jones or anybody else. But the one thing that I did want to ask you, because I do think it's kind of relevant, was so after the whole ADC season and stuff, Gordon put on because people were talking about potential matchup between you and Gordon, right? Again, where they were talking about heroes and that rubbish and stuff. All I wanted to ask you was, how do you deal with the trash talking on social media and stuff? How do you deal with that personally?
I mean, to be honest, I try. I generally try to avoid it if I can. Maybe sometimes I'd subtly stir Gordon up, but it actually helps me sell instructionals. So I don't like to. Certainly not to Gordon's level, but yeah. I mean, I personally prefer to avoid it. I liked the days when you'd go to a jiu-jitsu comp and it was more about someone's performance than necessarily, and you didn't, I feel like it kind of puts a lot of pressure on people, all the trash talk, now, Gordon wants people to fight him, but I think he actually, by putting so much the spotlight on that match, it actually kind of turns people off that, whereas, which obviously if it goes ahead, he can make money, but I mean, more people would accept his challenges if they didn't have such all the trash talk in the lead up, where there's a lot more on the line than just winning a jiu-jitsu match. I think for some people, yeah.
You just kind of
maybe
water off a duck's back, just let it go.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, if you want to see trash talk, you should see. I put up a on my YouTube channel. I put up a video on Dustin Poirier and Khabib. It was just like I was just saying some guillotine, like I was saying like how I would have approached the guillotine that he went for. But I might have put like a slightly clickbaity title, like, how he could have finished Khabib or something with the guillotine, like what I would have done.
Yeah.
Like there's at least like 600 comments. I think about 600 comments from people going, Khabib would smash you.
Ridiculous.
So yeah, I just kind of, I mostly just don't even read those sort of comments.
Don't even get involved in it. Yeah. Going back to you and your career, what's the one notable fight in your mind that was your favourite fight in your whole career so far?
Favorite fight?
Oh. Hard when they're sprung on you, right? You got no.
Yeah, it's hard when because there will be one that's like, you know what? Like, actually, it might be a wrestling match I had at the Nationals.
Yeah.
At the Nationals, I went in this is maybe a year and a half or two, probably almost 2 years ago, and I went against this guy in the 79 kilo division.
Yeah.
And I think it was, but then the score ended up being 13-12, but which is very high scoring for wrestling. Because I just wanted to, like, I didn't want to like try and pick my shots and like, try and strategize. I was just like, I'm gonna like, I was doing the competition for jiu-jitsu, like to get better at jiu-jitsu. So I was like, I'm gonna shoot as many times as I can. Like, how many times we don't really get the opportunity to practice that in live competition very much in jiu-jitsu. So to go into wrestling comp, I'm going to shoot a lot, and my opponent must have I must have left a lot of openings. My opponent was doing the same to me, and I lost it 13-12 that match. But it was I don't know, it was really good. And I think I had like a 6-minute match, but I was lying down for a good half an hour, just not moving up. That was for the bronze. That was for second place. That match. So I got third. Yeah, that was probably my favorite match.
Your favorite one. And
yeah, apart from like in terms of like, just like there was no I think you feel good with a match when you feel like you gave it everything. I'd say just about every jiu-jitsu match I've been in, I'll often come back like there was points where I was trying to be a bit more strategic and points where I was being aggressive, but this one I kind of just went for it. I had zero cares if I won or lost. Just yeah.
Make those matches a little bit more fun then, aren't they? Is where you enjoy.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
So yeah. So the polar opposite question then, your least favourite fight or one that sticks you the most in your career so far?
I thought, well, least favorite was probably against AJ Agazarm at Nogi Worlds.
Okay.
That guy's just, I think he got a takedown like right at the start, and I had like, I think I got 6 advantages but no score, and I lost by 2 points. This is if I had won, I would have been in the final of black belt Nogi Worlds. So like, it was I got a bronze in that year, but like that's one I actually probably did throw a lot. I put a lot of effort into, but it just was very frustrating. Like, he's very hard to finish something on. Like, I'd come up for a sweep or a single leg, and he would just find a way out. I'd go for submission, he would find a way out. I mean, credit to AJ for his defense. I think his defense is very, very good. So so that was probably the most frustrating one.
Yeah.
That I've ever been in anyway.
He has a really unique way of rubbing people up the wrong way as well. So that kind of doesn't.
Yeah. He wasn't. I had no problems with him like that. We didn't have any. There's no trash talk. He's always been good to me. But
there's quite a few people just commenting about that they brought your half guard instructionals and they really like them. Loving your 50-50 instructionals as well. One of the other questions that's been asked is after the knowledge of the leg locks becoming widely available used in comps, where do you see the next area of development in the grappling world? Hope this makes sense. And that was Aladdin BJJ.
in the grappling world. I mean, I think what you will see, I imagine, it depends. Like, I assume when we say grappling, we're talking no-gi.
Yeah.
There.
Yes, that's
Yeah, I would say for like ADCC, you're going to see better and better wrestling. You know, I think it's foolish not to be training a lot of wrestling, and if you're going to be thinking about competing in ADCC, because anytime it's a close match, it's probably going to come. So I think that I think you've got some. It's hard to say otherwise. Like, I mean, there's always going to be the leg locks are always going to be there. The back takes, the guard part. I think like all round. You know, I think as people specialize, like guard passing is quite hard in no-gi in particular because of the slipperiness. But I think the more people that kind of specialize in no-gi, the more used to the grips and so on that you get, so that the more likely you'll see that sort of stuff playing out. In terms of how people playing guard, I think that's a funny one, because I'd say, like, you know, if you look at Gordon and even Craig and so on, like they're tending to kind of come up more, like almost like they're wrestling off the ground.
yeah.
Whereas mine's kind of going the opposite. I used to play much more like that. I used to come off the singles and play more seated guard, and so I'm actually playing a lot more like K guard and playing off my back, because I think you know, the Meow brothers do an excellent job at getting to leg entanglements by playing off their back in no-gi, which was something that people weren't doing particularly well, I think. So I think you see still, you know, it's a divergence of styles, but it makes it all interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued to see, because obviously leg lock's such a massive part of the sport now. Obviously, in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you're not allowed to do any of the toe holds, knee bars and stuff like that until brown and black belt.
Yeah.
So when it comes to your students at your school, do you teach them the leg locks from brown and black belt, or will you show them from white belt, blue belt, purple belt? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. In no, we kind of separate. Like, I don't really, in the gi, I don't really, because we do gi and no gi classes. In the gi, I don't really teach heel hooks or anything. I kind of just because there's almost no competitions or anything where they'll be able to compete in the gi with them. So I kind of, for no gi, we do from blue belt and above, we pretty much roll with whole leg locks. So it's kind of white belt, we teach them to people so that they understand what they are, and then from blue belt and above, it's free for all. So and it's been fine. No one I very rarely see anyone get injured. Even, you know, that you've always got the people who are silly and they don't tap in time, but
yeah,
usually because your training partner is going to be nice, then there's usually not any severe injuries from that. Obviously in competitions it's completely different. You see tons from people tapping too late, but
a recent one, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that one was good. And toe holds and so on for the gi, we don't have such a strict rule on that. I kind of think, like, you probably want to start from, I'd say, at least purple. If you're going to be competing at brown belt with toe holds and knee bars, then I'd say in training you'd want to be doing them at purple belt and maybe learning them at blue belt. So you can maybe learn what they are at blue, roll with them at purple, and or maybe even earlier. I think I guess the main thing you don't want is people not knowing what they are and not knowing they're dangerous, and having someone do them too. You know, like if you get put in a heel hook and you're brand new to jiu-jitsu, you might not recognize what's going on, and you could potentially have a serious injury. But I think once people actually know what they are and that you're supposed to tap, which by blue belt I'd expect just about everyone does know that, then I expect it's kind of on their own terms whether they want to be silly about whether they tap to them or not.
Yeah, yeah. And what got you into leg locking? What sort of introduced you, or how did you get introduced to leg locking, and why did you sort of go straight into that or develop that system?
Well, I think
a lot of Brazilian jiu-jitsu schools don't do leg locks at all, and don't go into leg locks. So I know that people want to know what got you involved, or how did you get into leg locking?
I mean, probably like right from the start when I started training, I didn't really know what like jiu-jitsu competition was. I only knew MMA. So I kind of just like we trained with heel hooks and so on as well when I first started, but that was hardly a systematic approach to doing leg locks. It probably wasn't until I entered the ADCC trials, maybe over 10 years ago, when I was like, okay, heel hooks are allowed now. Like I need to focus on it. And that would have been studying Ryan Hall's 50-50 instructional.
Yeah.
And then obviously, maybe 6 years ago, qualifying for, or going to the ADCC qualifiers, like in the preparation for that, I started focusing on them again. And then that kind of just qualifying for ADCC kind of kept me focusing on it further. It's really for me, it was always an area that I could maybe catch up to the, especially 6 years ago, I was not at the level where I was going to go against the top Brazilian competitors and be taking their backs and choking them. But I thought maybe they're not as good at leg locks. It's an area where I could try to catch them out, and it took 6 years for that to happen.
Well, Shark Tank BJJ's put being a physiotherapist and understanding the structural vulnerabilities. So obviously having that knowledge, has that helped you as well?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think it's more helped me from, it's mostly helped me from an injury prevention point of view, like I think I'm aware which way your joints are meant to bend and kind of how injuries occur, like, and therefore what movements I need to avoid. And particularly like if I get like a niggle, I think I'm pretty good at acknowledging whether that's just something I can ignore or whether that's potentially a structure that could become a serious injury, or is it just soreness, so I think it helps a lot for that. It helps a bit with mechanics of finishes, I think, but I think that said, like people who don't know anatomy at all can still do a pretty good heel hook, so I wouldn't say it's essential, but it probably helps.
Yeah, I definitely agree. One of the questions actually has been asked, so I want to try and ask some of the questions here, so I don't feel like I'm leaving people out. Was what DVDs are coming next?
I have a guard retention one. It's almost finished. We filmed most of it before this whole thing. We're kind of just waiting to see when we can actually film the rest of it. And there was some little things I wanted to get. I like to get rolling footage and like kind of show the moves that I'm talking about in live sparring, and also just so I can kind of reanalyze and make sure what I say I do, I actually do. Because if not, then I kind of adjust it and kind of make sure that the instructional is in line with that. So yeah, on guard retention, that's along with the guy Ari Tabak. I never say his last name right, so it's probably Tabak. He's a black belt. He's got such good guard retention that I've basically I've taken what I already do, and then I said, let me learn what you do, like, because he's so hard to pass. We kind of sat down and he's kind of taking me through what he does, and we're both kind of presenting that instructional together. So that should be a good one. It's
Look forward to it.
There's heaps of stuff there that I personally have never seen taught before. So we'll see.
Brilliant. I look forward to it, mate. I'll check it out. One of the other questions I get asked a lot, and I wanted to ask you as well, is what advice would you give to new starters to white belts? Just sort of a generic question. What would be the advice you'd give to a white belt?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I'd say try to. I mean, because it's very complicated. So I'd say like stick with it. Like it works. I think like a lot of people get discouraged maybe because they might not see progress, but you need to kind of like it's probably one of the few things in the world where if you actually just stick with it and kind of go through the processes, you will notice the improvements. Whereas I think a lot of sports and in some arts and so on, you can put a lot of work in and you don't see the results, but in jiu-jitsu you really do. So I'd say stick with it, and once you sort of see that process working, it's kind of becomes addictive. And I'd say stick to the the high percentage things, the techniques that, you know, the techniques that work over and over again, right to the highest level. Even if you're not doing it to be a top level competitor, like if you see the move working over and over again in black belt, it means it's hard to defend. Like if you get good at it, it's hard to defend. So even if you're not trying to be that black belt competitor, like it's worth investing your time in that, because your opponents will have more difficulty with it. If you kind of find some weird move on YouTube and which is pretty common.
Happens all the time, right?
Yeah.
When did you learn that? I learned off YouTube.
Yeah.
Do you know YouTube patch that people should put on their gi?
Yeah. I mean, I have a YouTube channel, so I should have. But I mean, there's plenty of good stuff on YouTube. It's it can be hard, I think, when you first start to decipher what is what's going to be useful and what's not. But yeah, choosing something and maybe asking your coach, like, you know, what's a good move to start with, or approach to start with, and kind of following your coach's advice on there. And then, yeah, I think once you get into it, it kind of, and then of course buy my instructionals. That's the other thing.
Of course, get on the BJJ Fanatics and buy the instructionals.
Yeah,
especially at this time, because they've got loads of deals on.
That's right. Yeah, so I think once they get into it, though, and once they sort of see that when you really work something, you see results from it, I think that's when jiu-jitsu becomes addictive. So I try to get people who just started to experience that, and then the rest will take care of itself.
So as for you, with your training schedule, how often are you training? Well, what would be a normal week for you training wise, gi and no gi? What's your schedule like?
Yeah, I pretty much just do 2 hours a day. So I'm 33, so I don't know. You hear of these guys doing, you know,
5 and 6 hours.
Yeah, you either I mean, I don't know what's good. There's probably something that's helping with that, but I've never been able to do that much. I probably, when I was a bit younger, I'd probably got to about 3 hours a day, and that would be, you know, drilling and you know, quite a lot of drilling, and maybe and some rolling and so on as well, and specific training, obviously. But now it's a 2-hour training session. It'll be, and that's basically Monday to Thursday, and then Friday night might do an open mat, and Saturday open mat as well. So it's basically 6 days a week. It'll be half an hour of drilling, about 40 minutes of specific or situational training, and the rest is rolling. And sometimes sometimes I get too sore from that, and I have a day off or two. So I actually feel much better training less these days. Like, I think I used to try to push, because you'd hear about all these people doing much more than that, and I used to try to push it, and I think I'd be walking around sore, and I'd be showing up to the gym like, you know, not wanting to train. Like, I'd be showing up like sore and tired and struggling to get up the stairs, and then to go and try to expect to move in a way that you're going to improve when you're in that state, I think is actually not as productive as what I'm doing now, which is trying to back it off a bit and make sure I feel good, so that when I show up to training, I can do things at the intensity I want to, and pay it, you know, like I'm not trying to avoid certain techniques because I'm sore. I'm kind of feeling good and fresh, and I think you learn more when you do it like that. So
it makes you way more productive as well when you're training, doesn't it? That's the thing. It's like going to the gym and doing heavy weight sessions, and you're aching so bad that when you go and train, you're not nowhere near as productive, right? Yeah.
I'd say I definitely, I certainly wasn't doing the volumes that people were talking about, but even at the volumes I was doing, I was still finding that. So I backed it off, and actually right now in this quarantine, or isolation, I should say, I'm training much less because it's mostly just with Liv, but I'm now like doing Toriando passes and all these like high energy things and I feel good doing it. But like I normally just, I usually, anything high energy like that, I usually train like, it's going to make me way too sore for the payoffs from training. Like, that means I can't train the rest of my game as much. So it's been nice.
Nice. Well, the Instagram have got this thing where they, after an hour, they cut us off. So I've got to wrap it up.
Oh, really?
But I would talk to you.
It's already been an hour.
Well, I think it's because I came on early, didn't I?
Yeah, sorry.
So, but
Sorry
mate,
about that.
obviously I love talking to you, mate. I still have a lot of the guys talk about the seminar that you came over to the UK and did with us as their favourite seminar. So,
Oh, really? Thanks so much. Hopefully we get
yeah,
around there again soon. And
definitely.
sorry about the mess up with the time.
No, it's fine, mate. It's fine. But one of the things I wanted to just ask before we go, because they normally give me a quick little countdown,
Yeah.
is what advice would you have for people at the moment in quarantine? Because obviously, at the moment there's there's high levels of depression and stuff. People really struggling. What would be
Yeah.
your advice for people at this sort of this time, or to how to spend this time?
I mean, if you are getting like mental health issues, then I would recommend speaking to someone professional on that. But in terms of just like I'd say generally we know that staying active and doing exercise does help with mental health, and also if you're missing grappling, then I mean I think keep fit in some way. If whether you do jiu-jitsu specific drills, or whether you go for a run or go for a bike ride or something, like I don't really care how, but I think it is good to get a workout. And obviously if it is something relevant to jiu-jitsu, that's probably going to help you, like in terms of what you're passionate about. I'm personally working a lot on my flexibility as well in this time, like doing a lot of stretches and trying to work. It's something it's something I think if you work on, you can actually improve, and when you come back to training, it can make you better. So I might come back better because I can now move in a way that I couldn't before because I'm more flexible. That's what I'm hoping. Even though my fitness and there'll probably be a bit of a deterioration in my technical side that I'll have to build back up. But yeah, so focusing on that and study tape, and that's one of the best things you can do is whether you watch instructionals are good, like you can see what people are thinking, but I also think just watching competition footage and seeing, try to put yourself in the competitor's shoes and go, okay, what would I do there? Why are they doing that? What's the purpose of that grip? And kind of, if you really try to understand what the competitor, don't just watch it to see who wins. That's not going to help you at all. But if you watch it to understand in each scenario what they're doing and think about what you would do, and then ask yourself why it's different and how you could, implement that in your game, then I think that's going to have huge benefits. And again, you could potentially come back. Maybe not, if you did that, you might not immediately be better, but you could progress very fast when you come back if you've got a whole bunch of new approaches that are going to be successful. So,
Brilliant.
Yeah, that's my advice
awesome
there.
Bit of advice, mate. Awesome bit of advice. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much. Yeah, good to speak to you.
Yeah, it's been good to speak to you too, mate. And we've all been massive fans back here ever since meeting you and you coming over. So we'll be watching you and your career, how it develops, mate. But thank you so much for coming on and speaking to us, and hopefully I'll see you soon.
Yeah, take it easy. Thanks, guys.
Take care. See you, bro.